Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Jim Staley here, Passion for Truth Ministries, and we're going to continue our Sabbath element, How Do We Do Shabbat broadcast here with Rabbi Elie Mischel. We're grateful to have him with us here in studio again. We are going through Rabbi Elie's book. It is called Shabbat Revolution. You can click on the link in the description. I'll take you right where you need to be to buy it. It's really filled with a lot of amazing information, all the prayers, the entire structure and the spirit of what the Sabbath is all about. You can pick and choose what you want to do. He's made it very clear. You can kind of do whatever you want to do. There's no real commandment on how to do this. The fundamental commandment of Shabbat is don't work, don't make anybody else work, right? And rest. Yeah, it's kind of that simple. Outside of that, the traditions is what really creates I like the metaphor you used, the structure of the glass to pour the spirit and the blessing of Shabbat into. And so that's what we're doing. We're kind of going through some of the symbolism, some of the traditions, your traditions, my traditions, because we've been doing this for 23 years and we're Christians. And this is like a phenomenon that's happening. Millions of Christians everywhere are starting to actually do what the Bible says, and they're being blessed like crazy, and it's spreading like wildfire. Thus, the reason why you wrote this book.
Yeah, no, it's truly, truly incredible. And I'm speaking now as an outsider to this phenomenon, as a Jew, witnessing it in the United States, across the world, and I'm just blown away by what is happening. People are doing it on their own without knowing each other. Many people came to these conclusions even without Pastor Jim.
Yeah.
Just on their own. From reading the Bible, they said, wait a second, what is going on here?
Why are we not doing this?
Why are we not doing this?
This is number 4 on the top 10.
and the fact that this has never happened before in any significant numbers, but it's happening now spontaneously across the world. Me, I think we both agree.
Yeah.
This is a God movement right now, and it's pretty awesome to watch. As a Jew, this is something that we did for thousands of years. Right? We have our own unique relationship with Shabbat, but we don't see this in any way as cultural appropriation.
Yeah,
right. Because Christians are not pretending to be Jews.
Right.
Right. But rather, we are all tapping in as God's children to the Bible and to God's, his recipe for happiness and for meaning in life. And we're just joyous that other people want to join in and be part of this. Again, not to be just like us, but rather to tap in. And I think it only brings Jews and Christians closer together, right? Now that we're celebrating Shabbat on the same day.
Yeah, look, even Jesus said, the Sabbath was made for man. Man was not made for the Sabbath. There's a blessing for entering into something that is wholly set apart. And by the way, I think it's important to bring this out, even though we've already talked about this. He gave it before man sinned. He literally, it's not like God needed time to rest, because he was busy and he was exhausted. No, he's being a good dad. He's being an example to his children, right? So he never intended for us to sin. And if man doesn't sin, man is still keeping the Sabbath. And actually, you have no reason to write the book then. So in some ways, grateful, right? But at the end of the day, what's beautiful is people that will say on my side of the fence, oh, you don't have to do that. Well, I agree. You don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. You don't have to be faithful to your wife. You don't have to love your enemies. You don't have to do anything. You know why? Because God doesn't make you do anything. He sets it before you and says, blessings if you do this, curses if you don't. And it's not my fault. You choose what. Do we not do the same thing with our children? You don't have to be home by 10:30. If you want to be home by 10:30, there's a blessing. You get to use the car tomorrow. If you don't, that's okay. You can't use the car. And some of the best parenting method is actually just staying calm and letting them choose their consequences, right? So at the end of the day, I really believe God is like that. You don't have to keep the Sabbath, but if you want to, there's a massive blessing.
Right. And I would say that there's a difference between the Sabbath and some of the other commandments, which are difficult, right? You mentioned before, remaining faithful to your spouse, being honest in business. These can be really difficult to keep. Yeah. Right. And that's where God kind of tests us and makes or breaks us as servants of God. But when it comes to Shabbat, there's work to be done to prepare and so on. But to me, it's the most obvious one. It's all joy. Yeah. Right. Shabbat is what we look forward to, right?
Mainly because of the bread. It's not a
test.
It's mainly because, look.
Oh, my goodness.
Mainly because of this right here, ladies and gentlemen. This is what we're looking forward to. We're going to get to this in just a moment. But by the way, if you've not watched part 1 and part 2 of this, you need to go back and watch click the link in the description and go back and watch those first. Right now, we're in part 2 of going through the elements of and the symbolism behind why we do what we do on the Sabbath night.
And I'm glad that we started this way because there is a joy, a unique joy of Shabbat that you may not feel with some of the other commandments, right?
Yeah.
When you're somehow stopping yourself from cheating in business, right? You don't necessarily have a joy.
Yeah.
It's self-control, you're battling, you're fighting.
That's good.
But on Shabbat, right, this is what our souls are yearning for.
Yeah.
There's such a joy. The joy, let me tell you, once you get used to it, the joy of taking the phone out of your pocket, plugging it in and leaving it on your work desk and walking away is an absolutely awesome joy. It is incredible. The underlying principle of going into Shabbat with joy is so foundational. A Shabbat of sadness, right, is sort of, it's not a Shabbat, right? The whole thing is upside down.
You know, what's funny is Shabbat for us almost starts like on a Wednesday because we're like already putting our hand on the brake and we're ready to just pull it back. We're like, I cannot wait till Friday night. Like when you begin to do this and you begin to see the blessings and you begin to get in the groove, in the beginning, it's awkward. Like people resting is hard when you're not used to resting. But once you've entered into this rest constantly and for many times, you look forward to it like water for your soul. And when we go into Friday, like we start saying Shabbat Shalom at 3:00 on Friday. I mean, like we're nowhere near the sun going down and we're already ready. If it's Friday, almost any time when we're talking to somebody, it's Shabbat Shalom.
Right. And you want to make sure you've got some really joyous music.
Yes, music is important.
Music is playing, Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
Everybody's getting ready.
Setting the atmosphere.
You're getting things ready. You're cooking. Even if you're cleaning. I'm doing the dishes on Friday afternoon, trying to make sure that everything is not just cooked but also cleaned.
Yeah.
In advance of Shabbat. Right. So that way when we come to Shabbat, I come to my wife walks into a nice clean kitchen. Probably the nicest thing I do for her every week.
And one of the things that I've noticed that it's important, and I'm not really great at this, so Lord forgive me and help me to get better at this, but I have noticed that when I come upstairs, because I work from home here in my studio, early on a Friday, 3:00, and I'm helping, it changes the atmosphere for my wife. Because now I'm beginning to enter into the Shabbat with her in the preparation. So husbands, listen, I think that's super important that if you can take off work a little bit early on Friday, it does make a difference. Then whether or not you come in and you're helping the preparation, which is helping the frequency of your wife and your family, rather than skidding into your spot on Friday, like locking up the brake and you come up and you're ready to eat. It's just different than when you're kind of helping in the preparation part.
There's actually a beautiful custom for the husband to prepare the candles that the wife will light before Shabbat. So that means, I go to the candlesticks and I take out from the last week, it's left over from the bottom. And then I not only do I put the candles in the candlesticks, but I actually strike a match. This could be Friday morning. And I light the tip of each one and then blow it out. So that when she's lighting, I already I have a portion in her lighting.
Oh, that's cool.
I prepared it. And so it immediately lights because I've already singed the tips.
Okay.
Right. It's a symbolic act to show my wife that I'm there with her completely.
That's awesome.
It's an amazing thing. And one other point on this is that the sages talk about, there's all these traditions about, they all made a point of doing at least something on Friday to get ready for Shabbat, peeling the potatoes, or, chopping the wood in the old days, right? They did their part, right? These could have been men, 75 years old, like the famous sages of the generation, and they're getting down and dirty in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And that's both it also sends a message to your spouse, but also to God.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not above this. I'm not above anything. Right. I'll get down on my knees and scrub something off the floor to get ready for Shabbat. I want it to be beautiful.
It's so important. And it really aids in that bonding, the family bonding, spousal bonding. And can be always a good thing. And because throughout the week, we're all so busy. Like sometimes it is difficult. The husband's working so hard, or the wife is even working these days. Like there's so much happening. The kids are going to soccer or baseball and all these different places. But Shabbat is set apart. It's holy. And I believe that preparation is so important. Now, to keep on track, we've already talked about the opening prayers in our last broadcast. Right. Now, take us to the place. I think the next thing is probably the lighting of the candles, right?
Right. So we actually do the lighting of the candles before Shabbat starts.
Okay.
So this would be before you sit down at the table.
Okay.
Right. And we do it right before sunset. because once we hit sunset,
right,
once Shabbat begins, we actually don't strike a flame.
right.
We don't make a fire. And so like we're not cooking on Shabbat either. And when we have our hot water for our hot coffee, it's from an urn that's already been cooked and heated before Shabbat.
Gotcha.
So therefore we light these candles just before Shabbat, and it's an awesome moment, right? And this is a moment that has been given over to women primarily. Now I do light the candles if my wife is away, if she's not home, which happens every once in a while. But as a general rule, even though we both have the same obligation to have these beautiful lit candles in our home, right? We give the honor of it to women. Now, why women? For a few reasons. I mean, first and foremost, women are the home. And so since these candles are lighting up the home
And setting the atmosphere.
that is something that is in the women's hands to do.
It makes sense.
Right. And so therefore women are the ones who get to bring the light into the world. There are also those who say that there was some of the light, the primordial light of the world was darkened with Eve's sin. And so now women have the honor of bringing that light back.
Second chance.
Right. And kind of making up for the sin of Eve.
Okay. So traditionally, the woman lights the candles. Okay. Now that's tradition. Now for me, and I love that tradition. It's just because I'm a Bible teacher. My wife is more of like the side. Yeah, she loves to support me. And I always had this symbolism of what the candle. She let me do the lighting. Sometimes she would do it, but for all intents and purposes, I love telling the story of what the candles represent in our house. So there's a particular prayers in your book, right, of what the wife would typically say over the candles, right? And one of the things I love about your book, by the way, let me just see this again. It's called the Shabbat Revolution. You can check it out and grab it. Click the link in the description. But I love what you have in here, that he's got QR codes that are on every one of these that you can just scan, and it takes you to a YouTube video and lets them hear like how the prayers are supposed to be prayed or sung in some particular prayers. So you can check that out. Is there anything else that you want to say about the candles themselves? Because before we move on, then I'll share a little bit about how we do the candles.
I would just say that this is an awesome moment where we're going from the mundane and into the holy. And traditionally, this is a time of prayer, right? Where the women or whoever, or the men, whoever's lighting the candles will pause after accepting Shabbat. This is the moment of transition, and take a moment to pray to God for one's family, for our people. In general, it's a moment of awesome prayer. Because you feel that holiness descending upon you, and you don't want to waste that moment.
Yeah.
And so, don't just light the candles and then immediately run off to something else. It's true of anything that we do.
Yeah.
And any one of these rituals, the purpose is not just the ritual itself, but rather the spiritual experience we have with it.
Yeah.
And so to take the moment for a few minutes of prayer, I think is an awesome thing.
That's super beautiful. One of the things that we do in the lighting of the candles, because we too believe the lighting of the candles is like a significant, that's the curtain moment for us personally, is the lighting of the candles, because it changes the atmosphere. Everything at the table changes once the candles are lit, right? So what we've done is we let the candles be symbolic. So the fire, both candles are unlit in our home, obviously. And the fire's got to come from somewhere. So it comes from either a match or it comes from an igniter or whatever. We use those little cheap igniters that sometimes don't work at all, which gets embarrassing. But what we say is that this is the light of God. This is the light of Yahweh. So we hold that up, and especially for the little ones. For 20 years, we've been doing this. Our kids, what does this light represent? And they'll say, Yahweh, right? This is the light of God. And then we ask them, what does this candle represent? And this candle represents Yeshua. And so God sends his light into the world that is dark in the form of his son. And he's a direct representation of God himself in the flesh. And this is the light of God. And then we say, well, what does this represent? This candle is the only one left that's not lit. This one represents man. And we say, now God, or Yeshua, he doesn't force himself on anyone. He stays there, and he's the light. And we come to him. And then we take the candle and we put it over the top of this flame. But we don't light this candle from this candle through the flame. We hover it above the flame. And as I begin to talk and I begin to explain that what some people do is they just take the wick and they try God out. And it doesn't work. Never does it light. You can do it 100 times. It never lights. you have to trust God, seek him, and stay over the top of him and let his light burn away the wax from your life. And eventually, when the wax begins to melt, what happens? The candle begins to smoke. And as I begin to talk and explain how God transforms you, the flame jumps. It literally jumps from a whole inch from this flame to this wick. And now I put both candles together and I say, now what's beautiful is you can't tell them apart. And this is the whole purpose of God bringing his son into the world, is to create the image of God back in the earth before man sinned, where you can't tell apart the image or the real thing from the image. This is what we're supposed to look like, right? And then what we do is we have this kind of cool tradition where after that, we pray and invite the Holy Spirit to come into our home, and we take the candle, and everybody's sitting around the table. Now, we have a large family, so like this works. If you have two people, it's not going to work. But we take one candle and we pass it this way and we say, Shabbat Shalom. And then we take another one and I go this way, Shabbat Shalom. And now both sides of the table are passing the candle and saying Shabbat Shalom to the next person. And then as they're doing that, I'm telling the story of how we are the light of the world. And without us sharing the light never gets across the end of the world. And then there's always this awkward moment where one person has both candles, right? And they have to like pass them by, and sometimes it's kind of funny. And then one candle ends up at that end of the table and one candle ends up at this end of the table. And then I tell the story of Israel that was once one candle, and then it was split into two, the two houses of Israel. And God allowed that on purpose so that the light could travel around the world. And then one day he will bring those two candles back together, sticks of Ephraim and Judah back together in his hand. And this is our ceremony that we do of the light and the power of it.
Beautiful. The idea of being a lamplighter, right? This is what, I think our goal in education is. When we have a family, the goal is not just for us to constantly be pouring out our wisdom on everyone else, but to do so in a way where we make them into lights that are just as great as we are.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of sharing light and sharing fire, right? When I give you fire, it doesn't take away from mine.
Yeah.
And to be able to create not just followers, but transform our children and the people that we love and our friends and family into leaders.
Yes.
And they can go out and share with so many others.
Fire is one of the only things that you can give and never diminish what you have.
Exactly.
I just thought of that. And it never dawned on me that you give away water, you have less water. You give away bread, you have less bread. You give away fire, you maintain what you have.
You can light the entire world, right? You can light up the whole world really without losing anything from yourself.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. It's almost as if like on the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the wilderness, there was a pillar of fire that was over the top of saying, this is the presence of God right under here.
Right.
And on Shavuot in the first century, when after on the year that Yeshua died, he said, wait in Jerusalem. And you guys know this, that in the upper room, the disciples were there, and this rushing wind came in the window, and then there were flames, there were sheen, in the form of a Hebrew letter sheen, these tongues of fire were over the heads of the disciples, and saying that this is the presence. This is the temple of the Holy Spirit. My presence is over here. And so was there less fire of God because there was fire over their heads? No, God is fire. He's spirit. He's never less when he gives something away. And that's why this is just so powerful for me personally, that giving is always better than receiving. Because when you give, now I understand, like after 50 years, I now understand you can never outgive God. Because when you're giving, you're representing the fire of God, and you actually have the same amount. And maybe that's why the enemy doesn't want you to give, because he tricks you into thinking that if you give, you'll have less.
And this goes together with the message,
the whole message of tithing,
of tithing and of the bread and the manna, right? We all get what we need.
Yeah.
And the fire reminds us as well, as you're saying, as we were talking about here, being a lamplighter, by giving to others, welcoming others into your home.
Yeah.
You're not in any way losing, right? You will get what you need. God takes care of us, gives us everything that we need. That is one of the foundational lessons of Shabbat, because the message that we get for the 6 days of the week, right, which are days of striving and work, and we have to strive and we have to work. Right? We're not allowed to sit, in our parents' basement, at the age of 45 playing video games. That's not what God wants from us.
Right.
He wants us out there working and striving, but at the same time to balance our efforts while knowing that we have to do our part, but in the end, God will take care of it.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to hold together. And so we have to, we in a sense, we split it.
Yeah.
For 6 days of the week, we're choosing, it's all in our hands. And we have to go and really be creative, right?
Yeah.
These are 6 days of creation, meaning creativity.
Yeah.
Right. And yet on Shabbat, we've got to pause and remember, yes, I worked, but I look back on it and I realized that God was there all along, right? And he was part of it, making it happen the way that it was meant to happen. Not so easy to do.
It's
right.
Beautiful.
It's like on Shabbat, we're essentially balancing, the age-old problem of, do we have free will or does God know what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Right. How do we answer that question? During the week, it's all free will. I'm fighting and struggling through the forest. On Shabbat, I get to like a hill, in the middle of the forest, and I can look back and see that all along God was there.
All along.
So somehow they both coexist. The free will is real and divine providence is real. All of our efforts are real, but God is also taking care of us.
He's ordaining the steps of the righteous, of those. That's why he says, if you seek me, you will find me. So did you find him, or did he let himself be found? It's interesting. All right. So what's next after we light the candles? In our house, it's the bread. In your house?
Right. So we just did it in a slightly different order. We did the candles, and then we did the prayers, and we made the Kiddush prayer. And then we went and washed our hands.
Okay.
And then we come and we it's time to cut the 2 loaves of the challah.
Oh, this is the best part.
Yeah, this is the part where, my children, who sometimes are not just hungry, they're also hangry.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Can we talk for 30 seconds about that? Because this is a thing. We typically will do, especially if we invite somebody over, like it's a big meal. Like this is a special meal. It's going to be amazing food. There's going to be multiple sides, like dessert, the whole nine, salad, all of it. And people are hungry. And we've got this ceremony, and the food's going to get cold. Does this ever happen at your house?
Well, it's even worse.
What do you do?
It's even worse for the Jews because we go to synagogue. During the summertime, like we may not start at the synagogue till 7:15, 7:30. Takes an hour and a half. And then when you get home, people are starving.
Yes.
So I learned, pretty quickly that especially on these summertime, long Friday afternoons, that everybody's got to get something in their stomachs before we go to the synagogue, before we enter Shabbat, so we don't come in angry.
Okay.
Right. We want to avoid the hangry.
Yeah.
Which is something that I have nightmares about. I live in perpetual fear of hangry children.
We've had times where everyone is so hungry. And the food is there's certain foods that are not going to taste good if they cool down. You have to eat it when it's hot or it's game over, right? We've actually had Shabbats where we decide we're going to eat first because we don't want to rush the ceremony. We don't want to gyp God and everybody not even being sincere about what we're doing here. They're just all thinking, Dad, hurry up. You know what I mean? They're like Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, passing the candles, right? So we'll do that, and then everybody's happy. And then we come back and do the ceremony where everyone's relaxed. And now we can really, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but we have definitely done that in the past because this hangry thing
totally
is
get it. The hangry thing is scary. So you want to make sure practically people are prepared. But it is a beautiful moment when we finally sit down. We've washed our hands. Mm-hmm. We actually don't speak after we wash our hands. We make the blessing over washing our hands, and then we're in a place of focus, right? Because to help us, otherwise it's we're in the zone of I just want to eat that bread.
Right.
Everybody wants to tear it apart. So then we sit down, and then I make the blessing, and then I cut it, right? And I take in each piece of bread, I dip in the salt.
Okay.
Right. As we discussed, this is like our altar.
Yeah.
And this is a sacrifice. So every sacrifice, the law has always been, right, that the sacrifice has to be in salt.
Yeah.
And so we take the piece of bread and we dip it in salt. And pass it around the table, and it's like that. It's an awesome moment of the hangry goes away. You see it dissipating, and we taste God's blessing. We tell you if you have someone in your life who's willing to put in the investment to bake it themselves, right? You taste that blessing even more.
Yeah.
Right? It's just really really incredible, but no pressure. If you're starting, you can just buy and not worry about it.
Yeah. Listen, what you're saying is beautiful about the salt. We don't do that tradition, but I really like that because salt is a preservative, right? That's what it does. And the bread represents the Word of God, and the salt is a beautiful symbolism of we're preserving the Word of God. Every time we do this on Shabbat, we're preserving this tradition. We're preserving life. We're preserving blessing for the next generation, right? And I love even what Yeshua said, because he took this, and maybe he did this, but there was a night where in this moment he says, you are the salt of the earth. And that's a beautiful thing, because what he's saying, that's a deep, deep, profound statement to his disciples to say, we're doing all of these things, but don't forget why we're doing them. You're the salt.
Very good.
You are the one that's supposed to preserve my word, not the word itself. You are the word.
And the way that we preserve the Shabbat actually is symbolized by the 2 loaves. Why two loaves? There are different explanations, but something that maybe people may not realize, the 10 Commandments come up twice in the 5 books. They're initially in Exodus, but they're also in Deuteronomy.
Right.
Now, what's fascinating is that there's some differences between the two. In Exodus, it talks about Zachor at Yom HaShabbat. Remember the Holy Shabbat. And in Deuteronomy, it says Shamor, right? It says preserve. Now, the way we understand, or to guard over, right? So to remember and guard over. The way we understand each of these is that remember means all the positive things that we do on Shabbat, how it's like the water in the cup, right? It's the holiness that we infuse, the positive holiness, those acts that we do. And Shamor, guard over the Shabbat, are the laws, the rules, the prohibitions that create the environment of Shabbat. And what's amazing is our tradition is, well, which one was it? Was it remember or guard?
Yeah.
So our tradition is, and we sing this in our prayers on Friday night, Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad. That God, human beings can't do this, but God can. He said, remember and watch over, guard at the same time. Those 2 words came out of God, from God at the very same moment.
Love it.
They were spoken together. And the meaning of that is that you can't have one without the other, right? That the positive holiness, the water without the cup doesn't work. The cup without the water doesn't work.
Yeah.
And this is, the lesson of the salt of you should preserve, and it's up to us to guard it. Right, this is how Shabbat has to be kept.
Yeah,
right, and it's so these laws, and I want to emphasize this because I think unfortunately, laws have gotten a bad rap. In Christianity, I don't know, for 1900 years or so, right? And if they're done right, right, and where they're not the end goal, laws are a means of helping us get close to God. And even the prohibitions, the things that we can't do, right? On Shabbat, they create this holy environment by telling my children they can't use their phones, or they can't watch TV, or they can't drive off somewhere. Right? We are creating that holy atmosphere that we will then fill up with joy.
We can look at it as like, if you don't have laws, if you don't have speed limits, right? There's chaos. Laws create peace.
And then you also have a law about how you can immigrate by, in a legal way,
properly,
in the proper way. And you can't have one without the other. If we were only having laws about how nobody could ever enter this country, America would not be the land of promise.
Right.
But on the other hand, we know what's happened, that if you remove all the prohibitions, right, the whole thing falls.
Everything falls apart.
America itself can collapse. And it's the same thing with Shabbat. Right, we need the joy of Shabbat, but you've got to have the laws that
we need to have the laws that marriage is between one man and one woman, right? Like it's a law of God, and it brings blessing. All right, so to the favorite part is the bread. This is definitely everybody's favorite part in my house. Now, I did not know that the Jewish people make 2 loaves of bread. I didn't know that. We are making 2 loaves of bread, but for totally different reasons. Okay. So how the Staley family ended up with 2 loaves of bread is my daughter became so prolific in making challah bread, as I will show you right now. This is what our challah bread looks like. It's probably the most beautiful challah bread ever.
It's amazing.
It's made of 3 strands, but people were so hungry that they couldn't not pick at it. So we had to make a second one, because by the time actually that the Shabbat ceremony started, there was nothing left of the original loaf of bread. So we make 2. One is for us to eat before, and that kind of helps out, honestly, with the hunger problems. And then the other one is the actual one that we use.
Are you ready for something very deep?
Yes.
Okay. This idea of tasting the food of Shabbat on Friday, on what we call Erev Shabbat, on Shabbat Eve.
Shabbat Eve.
Right? This is connected to the redemption itself. Right? We know, and we talked about this, we actually have shared the same tradition that, you have 6 millennia, which connect to the 6 days of the week.
Yeah.
And in the 7th millennia is when the redemption, arrives, right? The full-on redemption. Even though we're in the process now, we're getting closer and closer. But here's something amazing. Once you get to Friday, and in particular to Friday afternoon, right, you can already start to taste the redemption of Shabbat. You start to taste, just like you taste the food of Shabbat. You said your kids are like picking at the delicious challah of Shabbat. So too, here we are now. We're not yet at the final redemption. The world still needs a great fixing.
Yeah.
Yet we're getting closer.
You can almost taste it.
You can, and you can taste it. And what we're doing here right now, a Jew and Christian, healing literally generations, millennia of brokenness, is a taste.
Yeah.
We are tasting now, like your children tasting before Shabbat.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We are tasting some of the redemption.
That's awesome. I really like that. The other thing that dawns on me that I've never thought about is in the Christian faith is we have the bread, okay, and Yeshua, the Messiah, is called the bread of life, like the manna that came down from heaven. It's divine. It's not from this earth. It's divine, but it comes to this earth, and you can eat it. And Yeshua said, if anyone eats of my flesh and drinks of my blood, they will never be hungry or thirsty again. Of course, he was being metaphorical that my body is broken for you. It's the bread of life. And coincidentally, he was born in the house of bread. I wonder what Hebrew word that is. Bethlehem, where you live, right? So he's born in the house of bread, in the Levitical place where they made the bread, and he comes twice. And so I've never made this connection that the 2 loaves of bread, we could easily make it. Symbolism of the first one is the one that gets completely destroyed before dinner time. Okay. He comes the first time and he dies. He just completely gets taken advantage of. And the second one is the one that comes in all glory. And we're very careful on how we cut, you probably do the same thing, but we're very careful on how we cut that, and everyone's very careful. And when we pass the bread around, now of course, we tell kind of the story of the Last Supper and what the bread represents, and the 3 braids representing, it can be the father and the mother of a house and the children, and how they're woven together as a family. And guess what? Like when you cut into it, you can see the 3 braids before it cooks, individual. But when it goes through fire, and how many of you guys have been through fire or tribulation as a family? You come out as one. Like you cannot tell the individual differences. You're connected and bonded. And that's what Sabbath does, right? And so we take this and we pass, each one is taking the bread from the single loaf. And as they're doing that, I'm explaining how Christ said that we're all part of one body, but we're many members, right? So Israel is made up of many tribes, but it's one nation under God, right? And that Hebrew word is ahad. And ahad is not necessarily the numerical one. It's a plural unity. Like a cluster of grapes is one cluster, but it's many members. And so we're taking from one loaf, but we're all part of this, but we're separate, but we're one. And it's this beautiful concept, right? That's why we all have to do this. And then we have the bread, and then we do the blessing over the bread. And so I'll let you sing your version, and I'll sing mine, and we'll let them, see kind of how we do this a little bit different.
I have a feeling it might be very similar.
It might be,
right? We recite the traditional Jewish blessing for bread, which is Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz, which means, blessed are you, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth.
Right.
And I don't know if you've heard this before, but that bread does not come forth from the earth. That's not how it works, right? There's a huge amount of steps. But the truth is, though, even though we have to put in all of that effort, when we're actually finally at that culminating moment with that hot, delicious challah sitting there before us, right? We say that it's God who brought it out of the earth.
Amen.
Right? We did it, but also God did it.
Yeah.
And this is that ongoing theme, which is Shabbat, of this partnership between us and God.
And the fascinating part about what Rabbi Elie just said is, in the wilderness, they had the manna, right? And that there wasn't any divine partnership there because it was just God doing everything. But he doesn't want to do everything. He wants to partner. He wants us to grow spiritually, which means that we need to be more part of the process. So when they cross into the Jordan River, into the Gilgal, into the land of Canaan, what's the very first thing that they do? They make bread for the very first time. They came in right in the springtime, right in the barley harvest, and God has it ready for them. That's the divine part, right? It grew by his divine supernatural command, but we had to harvest it, and we made it. And the Israelites made the bread for the very first time.
Right. We don't yearn for the wilderness where there'll be manna falling from the heavens again. That's not what we yearn for.
Yeah.
For 2,000 years, we yearned to return to the land of Israel so we could work in the soil and do our part together with God. That is the real goal. And, we experience that every
So now,
Shabbat.
do you sing the blessing or do you say the blessing over the bread?
Everything I do is a song.
Okay. Well, sing your version. Go ahead and sing your version.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Beautiful. All right. Now,
how's yours?
I don't know, but I'm not going to sell any singles for mine. I can promise you that. All right. So it goes, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Sounds pretty similar to mine.
It's very similar. And in our family, everybody does a different part. And so we have this crescendo of harmony that happens.
Beautiful.
We love that. All right. So then after the bread, we go to the wine, or in our case, the sparkling grape juice. Okay. But in our house, when we take the wine, if you could grab the wine here. And what I do is I'll hold up the glass of wine, and everybody has their grape juice. And especially if we have people over that have never experienced this before, I kind of go into a little more depth. But I start off with explaining the grapes and how the grapes are on the vine, and they're enjoying sun tanning in the sun, and they're enjoying everything. And they have no idea. They think that the fatness of the grapevine is their destiny. And then all of a sudden, the master of the grapevine comes and pulls them off and plucks them off. And they're not happy about this. And they're all complaining. And the next thing you know, they're being crushed under the feet of the master. And they're going, what's going on? Because they have no idea what their real destiny is all about. And they have no idea that their end result is supposed to be in a glass in the hand of the king. And the only way to get from there, this nice, comfortable place, to their real destiny is through tribulation. It's through being crushed. And it says in Isaiah that Yeshua that the Messiah would be crushed for our iniquity and bruised on our behalf, and that going through trials and tribulation is very, very difficult. But at the end of the day, there is a point to all of it. It's to purify us. It's to get us from point A to our true destiny, where we are in the hand of the king. And then I explained to them that the point of this is celebration. Like, yes, it's a sadness when you have to go through something really difficult, like death in the family, or you lose your job, or whatever it might be. But when the end result comes, you should be celebrating that God helped, like the Israelites through the wilderness was difficult. But the celebration was, guess what it was? What they brought back was a cluster of grapes.
No, it's absolutely true. And we say the same thing about the people of Israel being crushed, like the grapes being crushed. I'll add another piece here.
Yeah.
The sages say that Hezekiah, who was one of the great kings of Israel, right, of Judah, right, in his time, and he was a king that brought the people back in repentance. But he's criticized for the following thing, that after the incredible miracle where God destroyed the armies of Sanherib or Sennacherib, right, after God performed this awesome miracle. I mean, think about how that enormous army, 180,000 people wiped out overnight by God. Hezekiah did not sing praises to God. And he could have brought the redemption at that moment, and he didn't. So, I always wonder, and I read this teaching, like, come on, Hezekiah, like, where's this song? But now I understand better, because this is what we're living through today as well, right? You see, what was Hezekiah thinking about? Why didn't he sing? people forget that before that awesome miracle that saved Jerusalem, before the destruction of Sennacherib's army, right, this evil king had marched through Judea, destroyed several cities, killed many people, exiled many people. There was a lot of suffering that was going on, right? And now here at the end, there's an awesome miracle, right? An incredible joy. But Hezekiah couldn't bring himself to celebrate because he was still feeling the pain of the people.
Wow.
Right? This was not a superficial failure, right? This is a man who he saw all the pain. He couldn't bring himself to have joy, but God held him accountable because ultimately, right, there is a lot of pain in life. Like right now, the people of Israel are going through a lot of pain. For the last couple of years, the pain that we have gone through is insane. And yet, God is also performing awesome miracles.
Yeah.
And so we are being asked at the very same time, right, to recognize the crushing of the grapes.
Yes.
Right? To feel the pain of the crushing of the grapes. But we also have to celebrate when God, miraculously gives Israel the ability to defeat Iran in 12 days.
Yes.
We also have to celebrate and thank God for that. Even while we're mourning for all the pain and suffering that people are going through.
Right.
You have to be able to hold the two together.
Yeah.
And that's not so easy. And I think for many people, and I'm sure you've been through this in your life many times, you come to Friday night and you've been through some pain in the week. And maybe that pain is still waiting for you when Shabbat is over.
Yeah.
Yet, you've got to pause. You've got to look around at your family, at your beautiful family, and say, I also have a lot of joy here.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm holding my cup of wine. Right? And the joy with the crushing, somehow to be able to hold those emotions together, right? Not to be callous towards the pain, but to be able to, even in the midst of the difficulty, to be able to pause and say, thank you, God, for this incredible joy that you've given me. Look at all the blessings in my life.
You literally, he has no idea. He just quoted James chapter 1, verse 2, which James was one of the most Jewish of all the apostles. He was the president, the Nasi of the early fledgling Messianic community. We would say the first pastor, right, was James. And he said this, he said, consider it pure joy, my brothers, when you face trials of many kinds, because the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So he understood this very Jewish concept of trials, and they've been through a few. Trials produce something in you. And when it said that Noah was perfect in all of his generations, I believe, and correct me or not, Rabbi, that word there is mature. It's not perfect, meaning he never made a mistake. He's mature of all his generations.
And which I think is also true of all Bible believers and what you're talking about, right? Yeah. You could be going through great pain in your life. Shabbat is not just, for happy times. Shabbat is for difficult times. Yeah. When you come to Shabbat, you may feel like a crushed grape, right? And you come to Shabbat, and it is the day where we remember that God is with us, and we remember the joys that we do have in our lives, because there's always something to be thankful for. You look around at your table, whoever you have with you, you look up at God, you look at that glass of wine. This is not just a glass of wine,
right?
You may be that crushed grape, and you can somehow find the joy and the strength to go on.
One of the things I love about Shabbat is it's like outside of time. And it makes you and it forces you to not make it about you. Because whatever we go through in our life in those 6 days, like it's tough, right? And selfishness of man wants to still be mad at somebody. It still makes you want to be angry or whatever it might be. But on Shabbat, this is about the King. Like this is about the King of the universe. This is about praising him. And so you get to practice that discipline of putting aside the frustrations of life and going, you know what? There's always still going to be there. And by the way, work never ends. Like as soon as you finish it, you have another task. It's always going to be there. It's never going to end. But this is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And this is, by God's grace, our opportunity to go outside of time and to experience a little bit of heaven in that moment. Because when we praise him and we make it about him, he makes it about us. And it's fascinating.
Abraham Joshua Heschel said that it's a palace in time. That is Shabbat.
I love it.
Just as the temple is that holy place physically on earth.
Yeah.
Right. Shabbat is that palace, is that temple in time.
That's amazing.
And that every one of us can bring into our.
So after we do the bread, then we bless the meal, and in our family we bless the children and my spouse, and then at the very end of the next day you do a Havdalah ceremony. So finish up real quickly and tell them what a Havdalah is.
Havdalah it comes from the word lahavdil, to separate, to distinguish, and in this blessing, right, we are distinguishing between this holy day and the mundane days that lie ahead. And it's difficult, right? Because unlike Friday night, where we have that anticipation, that excitement, I'm entering Shabbat, there could be that dread as you're leaving Shabbat. Yeah. I'm going in, back into the week. I know the pile of work that's waiting for me. I know the stress and the pressure. And so, at Havdalah, we smell spices.
I love this. When I was at his house and I saw this, I'm like, this is the weirdest thing ever, but it's so cool. So tell him what you do.
Right, we smell spices, which give us like a little bit of life back, because we have this extra soul that we have on Shabbat, which is leaving us. So we revive ourselves with the little bit, this bit of spice.
So you got, tell them, I mean, you got to be a little more detailed. So you got a little canister or something, like a little clay pot or something.
Cloves
and they put cloves in there, and they're passing this around. Each person smells it, and it's like absorbing, like this is the last smell for another week.
And will give us strength in going into the week. It's almost like a physical reminder. And again, there's nothing magical or hocus pocus here. It's a physical reminder, symbolic thing to remind us. We breathe it in to know that God will carry us through the week again. And then, of course, we do the candle. And this flame, right? Our tradition is that fire was created, on Saturday night. That after the first Shabbat, Adam and Eve, invented fire. It's like the first creation of man. And that's not a small thing, because basically when we bless this fire on Friday night, not just a candle, it's a fire. Several wicks come together into a flame, right? We're essentially blessing all of the creative acts, all the work that we're going to do during the week, because it's not just Shabbat that is holy, but we're saying that all of the things that we now will do for the 6 days of creation that we're beginning again, all of that should be for good, right? When I'm making a blessing on the fire, I'm making a blessing on artificial intelligence, AI. I'm making a blessing on all of the things, the creations, the inventions, all the things that we're going to create this coming week. That too can be holy and be for God. That's why, and we do that as we end the week, not with depression, but knowing that, okay, now that I'm strong from Shabbat and I've been realigned and I know what my life is all about again, now I can go into the 6 days and make hay for God. And that's how we enter the week, with joy and with positivity and with optimism.
Amen. Well, Rabbi, thank you so much for being a part of this broadcast, this extended broadcast, this 3-part. If you missed any part of that, go to our description. And not only will you find in the description of this video the links to each part of this how-to Sabbath teaching, if you will, but you'll also find links to both his book and some other materials that I have for the Sabbath. And his book is called The Shabbat Revolution. I encourage you to get it. It's very, very well written. I really enjoyed it. There's all the prayers in there. You can pick and choose which ones, not one, this one. Make up your own traditions. The most important thing is create a container, like a glass, so that the Sabbath blessings can fit in it, and then repeat it. And, go by the Spirit, go by the Ruach. If you feel like you need to move this or change this, you're creating a legacy for your children. Because you know what? I've shared with people what we do in our Sabbath, Erev Shabbat ceremony, and thousands of people around the world now, they created that tradition for their families, which will be generations to come. Nobody will know how it started. But at the end of the day, we're so grateful for our brother Judah that has preserved the Shabbat, that the Shabbat has preserved them, so that we could enter into this ancient ceremony that was before time really even hardly began. God gave us the Sabbath to keep it holy, set apart, to rest, to connect with our families, the reset button for our God. It's a beautiful thing. I encourage you to check it out. As a matter of fact, if you would like a free download on this subject, and really a curriculum of how I do it here at the Staley household, you can text the word Sabbath to 844-763-9543. That's 844-763-9543, and you'll automatically get a free download sharing a short version, a bullet point version of how we do our ceremony Friday nights, and maybe it would be easier for you to do. In the meantime, thank you guys so much for joining us. You please hit subscribe to this channel, share this with everyone that you meet, and email us any blessings that you get from keeping the Shabbat at info@passionfortruth.com. And don't forget, you can go over to our website at passionfortruth.com. There's hundreds of videos, hundreds of articles, and encouragements for you, as well as if you'd like to partner with us financially and help us to pay this forward for the next generation and for the people around the globe in different languages, we would love for you to do that. The only reason why we're on the air today is because you're joining and partnering with us as the 12 tribes of Israel did in ancient Israel to make it all work. We want it to work. We need to work together. Thank you guys for letting us be a part of your life and a part of your Shabbat table. Blessings, and I guess we can say Shabbat Shalom. I'm Jim Staley with Passion for Truth Ministries, and I'll see you next video.